Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu faced loud heckling and chants of shame from opposition lawmakers on Tuesday, as the Knesset debated a bill meant to temporarily shield ultra-Orthodox draft evaders from arrest and prosecution, a move the Supreme Court would quickly freeze. Footage shows opposition lawmakers shouting at Netanyahu as he enters the Knesset plenum ahead of the final readings of the legislation, with chants of shame and leave echoing through the chamber. This is the Israeli parliament, in the middle of a war, and the fight on the floor is not about Iran. It is about who is required to fight at all. The chaos erupted during a heated session over a coalition-backed bill that temporarily freezes the enlistment of Haredi draft evaders for several months by suspending their arrest and prosecution. And the opposition to it did not come only from rival politicians. The proposal has drawn fierce criticism from Israel's military leadership, defense officials, and opposition parties, at a moment when the military is stretched across multiple fronts. That is the accusation echoing through the chamber, that while some Israeli families send their children to the front, others are being handed a legal shield from going now. Then came the moment that told the whole story. Netanyahu left the chamber before the final vote and did not participate in the ballot at all. The prime minister, whose coalition depends on the ultra-Orthodox parties, was simply not there when the count was taken. Despite several coalition defections, the bill passed by a margin of 58 to 54, 4 votes. That is the entire distance between the law passing and the coalition losing its grip on it. And that 4-vote margin says something larger. Israel has spent decades selling itself around the idea of shared national service. Tonight, its parliament voted, narrowly and amid shouting, to keep mass non-enlistment protected while soldiers remain deployed. The argument inside the Knesset is about conscription, but the pressure behind it comes from somewhere else entirely. From a region where the fighting has not paused for a single day while these lawmakers argued. Because beyond that chamber, the map is moving faster than any bill. American forces are facing attacks and threats across the Gulf. Missiles have crossed toward Jordan, with spillover fears reaching the Red Sea corridor. And in Tehran, a senior military advisor has just set a deadline measured in days, warning that if the American campaign continues, Iran will enter a phase it calls full-scale offensive operations. Israel's politicians are debating who has to serve. The rest of the region is being warned about what could come next. A full-scale offensive, and a warning that American forces could pay the price. That is the warning now coming from Mohsen Rezai, an advisor to Iran's supreme leader and former commander of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, who says the United States could face a massive Iranian response in the coming days if its bombing campaign continues through the weekend. And the warning did not come from just any officer. Speaking to Iranian state television, he declared that if the Americans continue the war in the next 2 or 3 days, Iran will enter what he called full-scale offensive operations, and he defined exactly what that means. Tehran would no longer settle for mere retaliation, and Iran would no longer present its response as limited to one battlefield or one border.
Negotiations and the war have ended. If the Americans continue the war in the next 2 or 3 days, we will enter a phase of full-scale offensive and destruction. What does that mean? Meaning we will no longer just settle for retaliation. No political borders are safe anymore against Iran's offensive forces. Of course, we will respect all governments. All nations are our brothers. But from now on, we will pursue American soldiers with offensive action. We will pursue American bases with offensive action. Both negotiation and war are over. It is over and done with. Therefore, it is better that they do not continue. The reason we are cautious about this is that if we enter this phase, the challenges and rifts that exist in the region and at the international level will be activated. meaning challenges will arise between Turkey and Israel. Even between Saudi Arabia and some other countries, challenges will arise. There will be conflict between China and Taiwan, and conflict will arise between Russia and Europe. In fact, the flames that will ignite across the entire world, it'll become more intense and widespread. And we do not want this. We do not want this. But the Americans, just as they regionalized the war and forced us into a regional war, are unfortunately making a mistake. This is another miscalculation that the Americans are in fact making. Therefore, I ask all the people of the region, the people of Kuwait, the dear people of Jordan, which has been the path of divine prophets, the people of Abu Dhabi, the people of Qatar, and everyone to prevent this war from igniting. Stop the war from igniting. Do not let the Americans and Israel run wild like this, and do not let them gallop their horses across the region without any thought or calculation. In any case, the issue of war is serious, but that American policy, which thinks that through more negotiations and more war, they can prolong this, in my opinion, will lead them nowhere. Of course, even at this stage, which is a stage of retaliation and deterrence, we are striking hard, and in the coming days, we will increase that intensity even further. The Americans should expect waves of drones. America should expect waves of missiles. There will no longer be just 1, 2, or 3 missiles. And if you were to land somewhere, let's assume you managed to, how would you get out? How would you even escape?
Any disruption there can shake global energy markets within hours. So where does this leave the region? Rezai's remarks rank among the strongest warnings issued by a senior Iranian official since this escalation began, and they come with a deadline attached: 2 or 3 days. But notice what he is actually describing, because it is not a threat delivered from a position of comfort. It is a warning that the flames, in his words, would spread across the entire world, and that Iran does not want it. Washington, for its part, has confirmed no invasion, approved no landing, and publicly announced no operation. Yet its aircraft have struck Iran's coastline for 7 straight nights, hitting systems that U.S. officials and analysts say could matter if more complex operations were ever ordered. Whether this remains psychological warfare or becomes a real operation may decide the next and most dangerous chapter of this conflict. The coming days will show whether the region steps back from the brink or plunges past it. The world is watching, and so far, neither side is blinking.